Discuss the chairman and the ranking Democrat of the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party, Republican Congressman Mike Gallagher of Wisconsin, Democratic Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy of Illinois. I'm curious as to what both of you want or are looking for out of today's meeting between Presidents Biden and Xi. Gallagher and Krishnamurthy in that order, if you could respond.
I think the best thing that could come out of this is potentially the reestablishment of a crisis communication channel. Think a military-to-military phone that exists to minimize the potential for a miscommunication or to deal with if there's an accidental collision in and around the first island chain. That would be a productive step going forward. That by itself would not be sufficient to avoid a war. We need a deterrent by denial posture, but it could be constructive. The worst case scenario would be if we relieve sanctions or 301 tariffs in return for a promise of future cooperation. Time and again, we've seen with the CCP, we pay cash up front, their check is always in the mail, so we just need to make sure we don't fall into that trap again.
I think that I would echo the sentiment about reopening a military-to-military communications channel. I'd also like to see progress with regard to reducing fentanyl precursors coming out of China, going into Mexico, and then flooding our market flooding our country through the Sinaloa cartel. I think that the CCP could control that a lot better and reduce that flow of fentanyl ultimately reaching our country.
So you're also here to release details of an investigation by your committee. In brief, last December, a local official in the small town of Reedley in Central California near Fresno, warning some of this is graphic, that official stumbled on a clandestine lab in what was supposed to be a vacant warehouse. The lab contained thousands of vials of biological substances and mice used for testing. Subsequent inspections determined labels on some of the vials said in Mandarin and in code that they contained infectious pathogens, including the AIDS virus and COVID and tuberculosis and the deadliest known form of malaria. One freezer was labeled Ebola. All of that's frightening enough. The lack of response from the U.S. government seems alarming. Chairman Gallagher, what's going on?
Well, were it not for the work of local officials who saw essentially a pipe coming out of the building that didn't belong, we may not have discovered this. And when they tried to contact federal government entities like the CDC, in some cases they were hung up on. So I think what this investigation has revealed is that we don't have in place adequate tripwires to detect and prevent biolabs like this from being established. And in many cases, you're able to buy these pathogens and some of this material online. That's unacceptable. And the individual in question was a criminal with a long criminal record, with dubious ties to the PRC. This was a massive problem, and we're hoping this will spur productive legislative action going forward to prevent this from happening again.
Right. The committee found that the lab was owned by a fugitive, a Chinese fugitive from Canada. He entered the U.S. illegally. He was getting payments from Chinese banks. According to your report, he was arrested last month for allegedly reselling counterfeit medical testing kits. Congressman Krishnamurthy, do you think that the Chinese government knew what he was doing? Do we have any idea what exactly he was doing?
No, we haven't seen evidence of that. However, I would go back to two things that Mike pointed out. One is anybody, whether it's a fugitive, whether it's a fraudster, whether it's a domestic terrorist, can purchase very dangerous pathogens online without very little vetting, if any vetting at all. I mean, you need an identification, a driver's license to get Sudafed in any local pharmacy, but you don't need even that to get Ebola online. The second thing is we need to equip the CDC and other agencies with the tools and authorities to proactively prevent this type of situation from arising in the first place.
So, Chairman Gallagher, what should happen now, do you think?
Well, right now we're actually holding a quasi-hearing on the event. We have biosecurity experts, we have the local officials, and we're hoping that out of this conversation comes an agenda for bipartisan steps we can take in this Congress to prevent this type of thing. At a broader level, I think the committee is going to be turning in the next year to this issue of synthetic biotechnology in general and the competition in that cutting-edge technology with the CCP. I would also say I think our intelligence community needs to develop a more sophisticated understanding of the very opaque connections between PRC nationals, businesses, United Front Work Department organizations. It can be very complicated to unpack that at times, and I'm not convinced we have the requisite expertise, even in the IC, to understand what's happening right here in America.
I'm glad, Jake, if I could jump in.
Yeah.
One thing I'm really glad about our cooperation is that we were able to establish facts in this report and dispel some of the really horrible conspiracy theories that are out there, that this was some kind of Asian virus lab or something like that. We got to stop that kind of talk and rhetoric and just talk about the facts.
No, it's great to see, and as always, it's great to see bipartisanship and evidence-based work. So kudos to both of you, and thanks for coming on, and thanks for the work you do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jake.
Coming